What's up, Ocean? You got Matt here, and welcome to episode number 7 of our 30-part series on every single GMAX Pokemon. Every episode, I have a guest on the channel to discuss how to use a specific GMAX Pokemon. We'll be going over stats, move pools, potential teammates, impact on the Sword and Shield Draft League meta, and at the end, give it a ranking. Once the series is over, I'll make a video covering the top 10 GMAX Pokemon in Sword and Shield. On this episode, we're covering the second of the Galar starters of the series, being GMAX Rillaboom. Last time we covered GMAX Inteleon, and if you missed it, click on the link in the description or in the cards. Now it's time to introduce our guest, though. He is the coach of the Portland Nightshaders and one of the most talented graphics artists and players in the community. Give it up for John Jr.
Oh, you shouldn't have.
Hey, let's just be honest, your graphics work has been absolutely phenomenal for a long time, so if people want to get stuff done and you're available for commissions, I highly recommend checking out JJ.
Thank you so much.
All right. So, you and I both have no experience with this Pokemon in terms of Gigantamax, right? It just came out. The DLC just dropped. Yeah. So, what do you think about it? About GMAX Rillaboom?
Its design, it looks so wonky, dude. It's got like the tarantula thing coming out of his back. I think it's really weird in that sense, but it's definitely a good Pokemon. Like with the whole grassy surge aspect of it, like, and not having to making the GMAX move, the grass move, not having to set the terrain with that move makes it really interesting. You know what I mean?
Definitely. The move itself, the GMAX Drum Solo, actually is pretty much Mold Breaker in a move, which is nice. I mean, it's kind of useful. It's the same as the other 3 GMAX Galar starters. Only thing I will say about that is, compared to being a fire type move or a water type move, I mean, grass moves aren't really going to rely on Mold Breaker too much. Like, yeah, they're Sap Sipper and I guess Sturdy, but that's pretty much it. Do you think it would have benefited by getting a different type of effect on his GMAX move?
Yeah, for sure. Especially because Rillaboom has like a very vast move pool, so it has a lot of moves to hit Pokemon that have Sap Sipper very well. Like Bouffalant, it has the Brick Break. Goodra can hit it with just like acrobatics or whatever other move that you want to hit it with. It's like, I feel like almost any other ability would have been a little bit better on it, but it's not the worst ability it could have had.
But at the end of the day, Grassy Surge does play a really key role in Rillaboom's, I guess, placement in the meta after the DLC, because we just got the release of Grassy Glide, which is a phenomenal move on Pokemon that can set up Grassy Surge, or Grassy Terrain rather. What it does is it's 70 base power, it has plus one priority, in Grassy Terrain, which is huge. So Rillaboom essentially, after Terrain and Stab, has like 120 base power attack that has priority, which is nuts.
Yeah, that makes Rillaboom like a really good life orb attacker, I think, in the current meta. Like, it makes it not have to rely on a Scarf, which is really nice because of its mediocre speed tier of 85. And I feel like it's a really good move that you're going to almost always pack on Rillaboom.
For sure. And you didn't mention its stats, though. At speed 85, for me, if this was a previous generation, if this was the National Dex meta, then that would play a huge role because it wouldn't be that great. But because of the Dex cut, and yes, we did get some new Pokemon released in the DLC, its speed is a lot better than I guess it would originally be considered if there was the full set of Pokemon. Do you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I feel like it's a little bit worse in that Dex compared to Galar Dex just because of that speed tier, but because of how the speed tiers work in Galar Dex, you can run EVs and other stats and not have to rely as much as this being a speedy Pokemon. And especially with Grassy Glide now, you could go more so completely bulked rather than speed invested Pokemon, and it's really good in that sense.
Exactly. And I will say that for me, Rillaboom stats are like perfect and ideal for a starter Pokemon. They're really well rounded, but at the same time, where the, I guess, loyalties lie, where you have the massive 125 attack stat compared to the 60 in special attack. And this thing can just hit hard like a truck, but at the same time, it can really tank hits with 100 HP, 90 defense, and 70 special defense.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a really good AV user, too, because of like all the wide move pool that it has, plus its decent special defense and really good HP stat.
Yeah, and like, again, another thing, you mentioned Life Orb before, you mentioned Assault Vest. For me, the other items, Choice Scarf was a lot better before Grassy Glide came around, but again, when you're Gigantamax, it really doesn't play much of a role. So I felt like Occa Berries, Yachi Berries, and the big one, Weakness Policy, is huge on this Pokemon because it has so many different weaknesses.
And it has so much bulk too, so it can take those hits even better, especially when it's Gigantamaxed.
100 defense, 100 HP, with max HP, you reach 404 at level 100, which would be 808 Dynamax, which is just insane. So getting to +2 with the ridiculous covers that it has, you get Grass, you get U-Turn, you get fighting moves like Drain Punch and Superpower, you have Acrobatics like you mentioned before, Knockoff or Darkest Lariat, High Horsepower. This thing has so many options that hits everything that it needs to, bar like Scizor or something, but at the end of the day, you can't hit everything, so there is that.
Mm-hmm. And it has priority too, which is really nice. Priority and momentum now, which is awesome. Or priority now and momentum prior.
Right, and I feel like having Grassy Glide is such an improvement over Drum Beating. Yes, Drum Beating itself is a phenomenal move, having 80 base power and lowering speed by 1, but you don't have that extra benefit of priority. Priority is so much more important than a speed drop. Now, don't get me wrong, people are still going to be running drum beating depending on the situation they're in. Maybe they don't want to use the hit by recoil by Woodhammer, or they don't need the priority necessarily that Grassy Glide provides. You never know, it's Draft League. You never know what can happen.
Exactly, yeah, and you might want to have speed control in general. Speed control is really nice, especially on a Pokemon that doesn't have, Haze, Roar, Whirlwind, something like that, where speed control is always really nice to prevent those setup sweepers from just winning league game.
Right, and Rillaboom is a fantastic Pokemon. I think we can all agree on that, especially with Grassy Surge, but it can't do everything on its own. It needs to have teammates supporting it. What do you think are some Pokemon that would support it really well, or some roles that it needs to be filled so it can be the best Rillaboom it can be?
Well, I think the first teammate that comes to mind, that I think that comes to everybody's mind when you think of a Surge Pokemon, is Hawlucha. Hawlucha plays off of it very well, especially because of the fact, it pops its seed and then it gets unburdened. So offensively, it's really good. It helps break steals that Rillaboom really struggles with. You also have Pokemon. A Pokemon that I think would work really well with the Rillaboom is something to break, fire type. So like a ground type with momentum. I feel like Excadrill would be really good with it, even though it doesn't get momentum. But I feel like sand teams would be good with Rillaboom. It helps, I guess minus the Grassy Surge. Zygarde actually would be phenomenal with Rillaboom because Thousand Arrows don't get affected by Grassy Surge. You got to play off of the Grassy Surge. It's kind of like similar to Tapu Bulu, Pokemon that work with Tapu Bulu, Heatran, things like that.
I agree completely. You really want to make sure that having your team not get hindered by your own Grassy Surge, especially in a meta with Gigantamax Pokemon, where it plays such a huge role because the Gigantamax mechanic is so busted. You're usually going to be bringing your Gigantamax Pokemon every single week, so you want to make sure that you don't have Pokemon that are completely hindered by the grassy terrain. So something that could take advantage of this would be Pokemon like Alola Marowak and Terrakion. Both of these Pokemon are really benefited by the grassy terrain, weakening the Earthquakes. That would be super effective on them, but at the same time, they get rid of the Poison, Fire, and Steel types that really would be destroying Rillaboom super effectively with their attacks. So I feel like those two really have a special place because at the same time, they're insanely powerful wall breakers, which benefits Rillaboom in the late game, allowing it and its pretty good speed for this meta to put in the most work it could possibly do.
Absolutely, I absolutely agree.
I will say, Rillaboom, for me, is the second best of the three Galar starters. Unless Cinderace can't use Blaze, then I would actually put it above GMAX Cinderace. What do you think it falls in terms of not only the Galar starter GMAX forms, but all of the GMAX Pokemon in general? Would you give it a ranking? Well, if you could give it a ranking between 1 and 10, where would it fall?
Well, okay. I think it's probably like an 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10. Like 10 being the best, yeah?
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's a really good GMAX, but it's hard to compare it to something like Cinderace, which is probably going to be one of the best ones as long as Libero is legal on it. You know what I mean? It's hard to compare this to Libero Cinderace, but it's still, on its own, it's still a really good Pokemon. Grassy Glide's really good for it. It's super bulky. Like you said, weakness policy sets are very viable. It has so many options with the move pool it has. It has max airstream, so it can get that speed boost, which is always really nice. Has a ton of different items. It has setup options with bulk up, things like that. So really good Pokemon. So I'd say like an 8 or a 9 out of 10.
You're right where I was thinking of. I was thinking exactly 8.5 on 10, which would give it, I believe, the highest ranking, the highest score out of any of the ones that I have covered on my on my series. And I actually would have to say, out of all the Pokemon I've covered so far, this would be number 2, if not number 1, behind a GMAX Hatterene. Now, one thing that is important though is we don't know what league you're in. Does your league allow for Gigantamax Pokemon to use items, or is it only a Pokeball or like a Master Ball or something like that? That plays a big role in how good GMAX Pokemon can be, and I find that Rillaboom, even though we listed off quite a few good items, it's not hindered as much as a lot of other Pokemon are by the lack of items. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I absolutely agree with that, because maybe you'd want to run leftovers on it. Well, you still have Grassy Surge, so you don't get completely hindered by not having leftovers. Maybe you want AV, but you can't have AV. Well, it's not the end of the world because you're already super bulky, so you'll be able to take those hits regardless. So it's not like if you take the item off of this Pokemon that it's a useless Pokemon by any means.
Right, and would your opinion of it change? Like how much of a drop would you give it from that 8 to 9 status if it could not use any items?
I would still call it maybe like a 7.5 or an 8. It's still a really good Pokemon. I feel like it doesn't get hindered that much at all by loss of items.
Completely agree. We're on the same wavelength here, and I love it. Now, was there anything else that you want to mention when we were talking about GMAX Rillaboom?
No, I don't think so.
Perfect. Well, you guys have heard what we think. Now I want to hear from you. If you're watching this video, comment what is your favorite or least favorite thing about GMAX Rillaboom or the GMAX mechanic in general. I'd love to read your responses. Also, let me know which is your favorite of the 3 GMAX Galar starters. But that's going to be it for now. Hopefully you've learned something more about GMAX Rillaboom. If this is the first time you've ever seen one of my videos, consider subscribing. You've already made it this far, so that means you probably have enjoyed what you've seen. Also, don't forget to like the video. Tomorrow, I'll be back with another new guest to cover the final of the 3 GMAX Galar starters, GMAX Cinderace. Thank you, JJ, for joining me. Why don't you let the people know where they can find you?
YouTube.com/C/John Jr.
Yes, sir, and on Twitter as well, because that's where you mentioned you're open for commissions, right?
Yeah, John Jr. 306 is my ad.
Links will be in the description. All right, well, thank you guys all for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next one.